your house, where you work, or the school we attend. Put yourself in the shoes of a fast fashion worker making 6 cents on one piece of clothing they spent an hour on in dangerously hot work environments. Would you be happy and content with life? Showing up to work unknowing of the possible harm you could endure that day? I know I am guilty of not always showing my appreciation to my family and how hard they work to provide me with a life I can't complain about. Just think of the poor families in third world countries with no running water and dirt for floors, trying to make a living slaving over the cheap clothes that we find trendy and we need it now. I know all of us at one point in our lives have supported a fast fashion industry company knowingly or unknowingly. I am guilty of online shopping on Forever 21 because of how easy it is to add an item to your cart and become hooked on the look. Throughout my speech, I hope to persuade you all that even though it may be tempting because we are all broke high school students, that the negative effects we are encouraging with every purchase is not worth the effects on our environment and the workers within the industry. In the article, Trending Towards Sustainable Fashion, Hi-S-A Hall states, fast fashion is simply defined as inexpensive clothing produced rapidly by mass marketers in response to the latest trends. Now that we know just the basics, let's jump into some effects. In my audience analysis, I asked you all what the lowest paid worker was, and 65% of you were correct with the answer of $3, which I later found to be false. In the article, The Domino Effect by Cassandra Elrod, she states, a 23-year-old worker in a Bangladeshi garment factory made the equivalent of $10 a month when she first took the job. When she and a couple other workers went to the factory owner with a list of demands, including safer work conditions and higher wages, they were severely beaten. Elrod then goes on to explain, these working conditions the ladies have to spend many hours in are usually in decrepit buildings that house these manufacturing factories, as well as the dangerously hot and chemical-ridden environment workers encounter each day. With the long hours and dangerous conditions, accidents are prone to happen. In the article, Ugly Beautiful, Counting the Cost of the Global Fashion Industry, Luis Crew states in his article, in 1997, Nguyen Thi Thu Phung died in Vietnam while making Nike trainers. She was struck in the heart with a piece of sharpel that flew out of a sewing machine. As you can see, in 1997, the conditions were horrible and unfortunately they have not gotten better since. In the article by Elrod, in 2013, a manufacturing building collapsed in Bangladesh, killing more than 1,100 workers and injuring at least 2,000 more. Clearly, the conditions have not made improvements because they are not being reinforced in these small countries. Unfortunately, middle-aged and older women are not the only ones in this position. Children in the work environment do not normally have a choice. In the Domino Effect article, under the Human Rights Impact section, it talks about how school-aged children are becoming victims of these cheap labor methods. In China, these young kids are being exploited and exchanged through a government-sanctioned work program. Parents are being forced to use identification cards to make the children look older when they are being exchanged. These children are being put into these dangerous work environments and are having to adapt to these new environments. Moving on to some of the environmental impacts, Miguel Sebastian states in his introduction of novel sustainable alternatives for the fashion industry, a method of chemically recycling waste textiles via acid hydrolysis, the generation of waste textiles has been steadily increasing over the past decade due to the increase in consumption of textiles worldwide. For a little background, textiles is pretty much just any piece of clothing or garment that you can find in a store. In my research, I concluded that the only time the demand for fast fashion or any clothing went down was when a catastrophic event occurred, such as the one in 2013. In the article, The Impact of Fast Fashion on the Environment states it takes 10,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of cotton, and 1 kilogram is approximately 2.5 pounds, or approximately 3,000 liters of water for one cotton shirt. Not only is water a problem but the waste dyes from these factories are affecting the water these small countries are relying on for survival. The dyes are being poured straight into nearby rivers, contaminating the rivers and taking away the basic necessity these families need. These are a couple pictures of what it looks like. Like this one is what it looks like directly after the chemicals are being poured into the rivers. Not only is waste and pollution harming the environment, but when the chemicals are poured into nearby rivers, it eventually is released into the ocean, which then will be more harmful to not only us as humans, but also wildlife and marine life. Elrod writes, the EPA considers many textile manufacturing plants as hazardous waste generators. The chemicals in the fabrics by fast fashion companies have been traced back to cancer-causing toxins, the worst offenders being Calvin Klein, Levi's, and Zara, all very well-known brands that most of us have probably once in our life been familiar with or even bought clothing from. Continuing on in Elrod's article, she says, retailers with little or no reputation for chemical management programs include Esprit and Victoria's Secret. Now that we know more about the negative effects in the article, novel sustainable alternatives for the fashion industry, a method of chemically recycling waste textiles via acid hydrolysis, the basis of this method is to reduce the chemical waste. Scientists and engineers found through trial and error process that with a two-step process, they could effectively depolymerize textiles into glucose. Their first effort was to depolymerize lysocellulosic biomass, but the technology ended up being too expensive. It worked fine, but with the cost, they had to find a new way. So they began the acid hydrolysis theory. In the article by Sebastian, he states, we selected textiles that had been deemed unfit for resale and were labeled 100% cotton for the experiments. They eventually got the textiles to the original cellulose levels of cotton and reduced the waste. Now that we have dug deeper into the environmental, labor, and ethical effects from the dark side of the fast fashion industry, I personally hope the information I have provided you all with today will help you value the life and well-being of the fast fashion workers and our environment as a whole. Even though we may be half a world away, our small actions in a big industry can affect someone greatly. The change won't be fast, but it will be very rewarding in the end. Thank you.